Good day, everybody. I wanted to start by talking about building the perfect organization. What is the perfect organization? How can we create, develop, sustain, maintain the perfect organization? The great aspect about organizations or building the perfect organization is that there's so much information out there to find what is a good and perfect organization. My hope is to offer 5 strategies that view your organization, if you've built it or rebuilt it, if you're working as an employee in an organization, but 5 strategies that are fairly direct yet simplistic. Nearly any organization of any size could implement these strategies and have success, not only be effective, but also to be efficient. In other words, not only to work well, but also do well with the least amount of resources that you need. And that's one of the challenges of today's world, is that we have to create a product or service given that there's so much competition throughout the world. We're not just competing against people next door in the same town or in the same state, but throughout the world. It makes it certainly more challenging, also more exciting as well, which we'll talk about. So the perfect organization has 5 strategies, follows 5 actions, or has 5 traits. If you were to assess what we would think is a perfect organization, they would have some semblance of these 5 strategies. First is they dream of the impossible. They achieve the possible. They make something that somebody wants. They make something better or make it better. And lastly, they take the good and the noble path. Each of those we'll talk about in much greater detail. But those are the 5 strategies that I think make a nearly perfect organization, or as close to perfect as we can make it. So let's talk about dreaming of the impossible. Why should we have dreams that are impossible to achieve? There's not a person that we've met that doesn't have a dream that's impossible. The issue is, do they ever make it possible? That's the second trait. But first we'll concentrate on dreaming the impossible. In organizations, we call that vision. Vision for a future. Vision for something different. The vision of something that may not come true. But in order to work towards something, you actually have to believe in something. You have to believe that there's something different that is meritorious for us to at least consider. Dreams begin with imagination. How do we determine our imagination? We determine our imagination by reading, by talking to people, by watching TV. There's a whole host of influences that we have that really are designed to make our mind wander. It's a sense of what I call wonderment, which is really an exciting thing to do. We have to be smarter and faster. Secondly, we have to think that we're right. We have to be convinced that we're right. And we have to be, this word about, and unafraid. We have to be unafraid of the future. Fear and failure go hand in hand. We fear the future because we think that we may fail. And of course, if you never have fear, then you really never fail. In fact, this whole issue of failure is because of, in some ways, what other people think. We are petrified in a way of not failing in our eyes, but in failing in other people's eyes. As I often say, the fear of failure and the fear of what other people think has destroyed the ambitions of most men and women. So we need to dream the impossible. The organizations that have done something that is truly revolutionary, that has transformed their industries, have done so because they started with the dream. One of the greatest dreams, of course, is Apple. Apple Computer. They dreamed of a computer on every desk at a time that most people thought that's impossible. It's impossible. But that was the dream they had. So we need to hire dreamers. We can outsource the rest. Find employees that dream. And then the rest of the work we can have done by other people. But it is those few individuals that have that unique mind that really are going to be at the forefront of nearly any success that organizations have. There's this great quote that I've come up with that says, we can dream of the unattainable. We can hope for the improbable, but we must do the possible. So the first is to dream the impossible dream. The second is to achieve what I call as the possible. I want to relay this quote again because it's really profound if we think about it. So we can dream of something that's unattainable. We can even hope. Hope's a great thing. We can hope for something that's improbable. But we gotta do the possible. We must do the possible. And that's the second aspect of great organizations, perfect organizations. They have that dream, but then they have that determination. Dreams and determination. Here I call it to achieving the possible. The common attribute, in fact, of what explorers and inventors have done, there's many people who've explored and invented, and we've never heard of them. Why have we never heard about them? Because they've never realized their dream. The great men and women of our time actually realized their dream. They just didn't dream something that's impossible. They actually achieved what was possible. What has been imagined can actually be created. And what's been created can actually be recreated. I love this word about doing something. So it's nice that we believe in something. It's nice that we want to accomplish something, but we also have to do something. So what separates what we call the courageous from the cowardly, the winners from the losers, the good from the bad, and the consequential from the insignificant is the determination to at least do something. There's a great saying that's very trite in a way, but it says, you got to try. You at least got to try. And that's what we're saying here. Have the dream. Organizations that have the great dream, meritorious. They also have to achieve what's possible. And it's two aspects of a coin that are really important. The two most important as we move along with the career. I believe that over any organization or over any employee, that if you can dream it and then sacrifice for it, risk for it, and then work for it, then you at least have a chance to make it. But you can't make it as an organization. You can't make it as an employee. If you don't dream it, if you don't sacrifice your time, your money, whatever it may be, if you don't sacrifice for it and then take a risk, you have to take a calculated risk. That's what a risk is. It's calculated. It may not work, but I've studied it, I've researched it, I've talked to individuals about it, and we have a good chance. So you have to take a risk. And then you have to work for it. There is absolutely few people, if any, who have made great transformational changes in our society. There's few organizations that have not changed the very industries that they've been in, that haven't worked hard. I've always said that if you work hard, you'll be a success. Maybe not in the industry or the job that you wanted, but you will be a success. So if you dream it and sacrifice, take a risk, and work for it, you at least have a chance to make it. Without it, you don't have a chance. Third, organizations that have to make something that somebody wants. And there's a number of organizations that come out with great products, but they're products that don't sell. And you have to have a market for what you make. So when you dream of that product and then you build that product, you actually have to make sure that there's a market for it. And if there's not a market for it, you have to create a market for it. And how do you create that market? Well, I think there's a process that I go through that's called different, unique, interesting, and fun. And those are the 4 words that I use. So different. Create something that's different. Whether it's a hamburger that tastes different, that uses a different bun or a different meat, something that's different. If it's different, it's going to be unique. It's easier to sell something that's unique than sell something that's the exact same. If it's unique, it's going to be interesting to people. People are going to have an interest in what you've done because they haven't seen it before. And if they're interested in something, it's a lot more fun. Think of an amusement park ride. You certainly want to go on the new and latest, greatest ride. Movies. We don't go and watch the original Star Wars as much as we anticipate the new one. Or any new movie that's coming out. That has much more interest to us. And so when we try to make something new, we also have to make something that somebody wants, which means we have to sell that product. Any organization has to sell what they make. It's the only way that they survive. And they sell something Even if after it's created, you may not think there's a market, but you have to make sure that when that product or service is made, that you develop a market for it. And you develop a market by making sure it's different. If it's different, it's going to be unique. If it's unique, at least people are going to be interested in it. And if they're interested in it, you have an element of fun. And that's a perfect way in order to develop something and then turn around and sell it. In nearly anything that we do, you have to work hard, be kind, and never give up. What permeates organizations and their employees, from the success to the not success, is this factor of working hard, being kind, and never giving up. As you create this market, as you dream the impossible dream, as you achieve what's possible, never forget that underlying nearly any strategy, any action that an organization takes, is taken by people. And people that work harder and are kind and never give up are those that tend to be successful over anyone else. And if you have organizations inclusive of those people, you have a good chance of making it in this obviously competitive world. Fourth, so we've talked about this dream. We've talked about achieving the dream, achieving what's possible. We talked about making something that somebody wants. Fourth aspect is to make it better. We've already made the product. We've already now created a market for the product. Fourth strategy is to make it better. It doesn't necessarily make sense. It actually does. It does make sense because in today's world, what's interesting about the world in which we live in is that the competitive edge, that aspect that allowed an organization to have a product or service that no one else could offer, that competitive edge doesn't last as long as it used to. The competitive edge, if you came out with a product or service, you would be able to dominate a marketplace for a specific period of time. That period of time is getting narrower and narrower. As soon as you as an organization come out with a product, the competitor has already determined how to come out with a product that's similar to that as well. And so as soon as we make a product, we have to make sure that it's better and better than our previous version. I created this model of survival so many years ago. And it says that you need to make it, build it, sell it, and then change it. We love the word change. But it starts with, of course, making it, which you have a dream, and then that from dreams you have the determination to make it. Make it. Then you have to build it, which is, again, achieving the possible. Then you have to sell it. If you can see that, that's really the third aspect, is you got to create a market for it. But the next thing that you have to do, as soon as you put a product or service into the marketplace, and especially if it's successful, there will be other people who are going to be copying what you have created. And unless you make your product better, bigger, cheaper, whatever it may be, you're not going to enjoy your competitive edge very long. In fact, you're going to be out of business. It's a great example with Subway restaurants. Subway restaurants never used to toast their sandwiches. But yet, Quiznos came out and they had toasted sandwiches. Well, very quickly after that, Subway introduced toasted sandwiches in their restaurants, and so did Togo's, which is another sandwich shop. They did that because they knew they were losing customers who wanted toasted sandwiches, not just great bread on sandwiches. They also wanted them toasted in certain cases. So the competitive edge that Quiznos had didn't last long because very quickly after they started to make inroads into the industry and take away business from Subway, Subway decided we need to toast our bread as well. At least have that option. The model of survival. Again, the words model of survival aren't saying that an organization is going to thrive if they follow this model. It just means that they're going to be able to survive. Because a legacy is not determined by where we start, but where we end. So you may have a great idea and a great product, but at some point, you have to put it into the market and you have to make sure that you have a change in that product or service on a continual basis. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to sustain the success that you have and make a difference in what you're trying to do within an organization. Make a difference in what the organization itself is trying to do as well. Lastly, is you need to take the noble and honorable path. What do we mean by this? Most organizations teach ethics. Most people have a sense of moral composition. There is this thought of good and goodness that permeates nearly every organization. We, as customers, we don't want to interact with, we really don't want to do business with, a business that's seen as unscrupulous, unsavory, even unethical. Instead, we want to work with an organization that has our best interests at heart as a customer, even as a community. So organizations that take the noble and honorable path have a better chance of eliciting the support, the loyalty of customers. It's an important aspect. As I said in the PowerPoint, no matter the obstacle, regardless of the challenge, irrespective of the sacrifice, we must stand for something, work for something, fight for something that is decent, honorable, and just. If we as an organization stand for something that's decent, honorable, and just, we have a great chance of not only obtaining, encouraging new customers to interact with our organization, but to sustain them over a long haul. They feel good about interacting with the customer and with an organization that acts in this manner. And so we have to create an organization that takes the noble and honorable path. We don't take shortcuts. We maintain quality. We ensure that the customer has all the information necessary to make a decision about our product or service, that we stand behind the product or service that we present. And most importantly, in relation to taking the noble and honorable path, is there's nothing ever that we would compromise in terms of our own personal credibility and the credibility of our organization. We stand for righteousness and we stand for goodness. That is the perfect organization of the future, which is comprised of perfect employees. Of course, nothing's ever perfect. We would love to have perfect children and have the perfect job. But when we use this word about a perfect organization or perfect employees, we want to get as close to perfect as we can. Because while we can't choose the cards we're dealt, we can choose how we play them. And so for those cards that we have been given, that we've been dealt, hopefully those cards, we can do something good with them so that we can maybe become something great. As an organization, organizations could be a force for good. And if they are a force for good, they can be a force for greatness. That's a perfect organization.